month of the year. Time sure flies. This is what I'm going to talk about today. Yesterday, I took a class in diabetic long-term self-care, and they used the font which I'm showing right now, 辛弃疾. This font, I love it much more than what used to use the Simpson and the P. Ming Liu at the bottom. I've used for decades actually, but I like this one better. So from now on, I probably will try to use that new font, which is called DF Chi SB. And I tried to change my next slide into that font, but boom, it became very big. So it's going to take me a lot of work to figure out how to use that. So I'm not using it today. Now here's the list of the vocabulary list, and fortunately, I did not have anyone that's highlighted in red, so we're good. I'm not going to read it right now. We're just going to follow the list later. However, before we start to do this list, I'm going to do some housekeeping things. Not really housekeeping. It's just something that I need to remind you that I made some mistake or I need to explain something else. So this is the last slide for our last class, in which I grabbed it from the internet, and the first line of the poem is 青山隐隐水遥遥, which is wrong. So I'm correcting it here by putting the 条条 there. They mean more or less the same thing, but as far as I remember, it should be 条条 instead of 遥遥. And the next thing is Wu Qi told me maybe ByteDance owns TikTok. So I went and looked into that. And sure, she was right. And ByteDance is one of the unicorn companies, which means a startup, privately held company that's worth more than 1 billion US dollars. So there's a pretty big and a privately owned company. And it's got all these products like Toutiao, which means headlines, and TikTok and Douyin, they're the same thing. And Douyin is used in China, I think. And there are other things. They are mostly high-tech or internet related. So that's a big company. And the next thing is that I just happened to come across this advertisement about a free internet reading play. It's called Clytemnestra. And I happened to be talking about this lady last week. So I want to show you this poster about a free reading. It says methodical. Okay, this is a made-up word. It's a mythology and methodical. So they call their company methodical and ensemble. So it's a group of actresses. They say there are a female acting group, so I call them actresses. They present an online reading of this play. And this play was a modern rendition of a Greek tragedy. Originally, there were at least 2 Greek tragedies based on the story from Homer. I told you about Homer, 就是我们说的荷马哈. He wrote many epic Greek epics. Epics 我们中文叫史诗. Okay, so this 荷马的史诗 is very, very famous, and it's influenced the entire Western culture. So we must pay some attention to him. And in his story, there's Clytemnestra, and two of our great Greek tragedy playwrights. That is, which one? Not Aeschylus, so it's the other two. It's Euripides and uh, no, it's not Sophocles. Okay, I'm sorry. The two writers were Aeschylus and the Euripides, and they wrote about different characters. So their plays are under different titles, but they're both not Clytemnestra. I think one of them is Orestes, who is the son of Clytemnestra. But in this play, of course, they talk about the mother, how the mother killed the father, because, well, you will find out when if you watch it. I just want you to know that. Put it on your calendar, but you need to go to their website, which is methodicals.com, and you register. You will buy a ticket for free, and they will send you an email with the link, so that when the time comes, you will just click on that link and you will be allowed to listen to the entire reading of the play. Okay, and I also included here the two pictures I showed you last week. This one is called Tomb of Clytemnestra, which I told you it's definitely not her tomb, but they call it that name. It is in Mycenae, Greece, and I showed you this picture so that you will understand what I mean when I say an arch with a keystone on top. This is her tomb that did not have a keystone, so that there was no arch because it was very old. Well, when you talk about Homer, that would be maybe 800 years before Christ. So that's a long time ago. And there was no such a technology as a keystone. Okay. Here's the writer, the playwright's name. You could either say Aeschylus or Aeschylus. Every time you see AE, you can do an A or E. Okay, such as 爱琴海 some people say EG and C, some people say AG and C, because it's spelled with an A, half an A and half an E, clamped together. Okay, that's the name of the writer. And one day, I promise I will talk about these Greek writers, playwrights. They are just so wonderful. This event is free and donations are gratefully accepted. So when you register, it will come up to say, do you want to donate? You can just say no. To me, that's natural, because you haven't seen it. You don't know whether it's worth any money. So afterwards, if you really want to donate, you can go to their website and you can donate over there. Here is a gold mask of the so-called Agamemnon. Agamemnon is a husband of Clytemnestra, and he was killed by the wife. And when Heinrich Schliemann, a German archaeologist who is an amateur archaeologist, he was a businessman, but he loved Homer's epics. So he went about, spent half of his lifetime trying to find out where the town of Troy is, and he found it. And that's why he's forever remembered as a great archaeologist, even though he was not trained as an archaeologist. So he founded this site of Troy, and he found the site of Mycenae that we just saw this Clytemnestra's tomb was. And he also went to other places like the island of Crete, and he was trying to dig up King Minos' palace. He died before he started that work, and someone else, I think it's Eric something, Hansen or something. Yeah, that person finished the work. Yeah, if you go to the island of Crete, you can go see that wonderful palace, including the maze where the Minotaur was. So it's really hard to say whether it's true, fictional, or not, because it's got lots of fantastical stories in it, which are apparently not true. But when you find the palace, you have to admit, yes, it's probably true, even though part of it is not true. Okay. That's a story of Ariadne and the Theseus, but we'll talk about that some other time. Theseus, you can also pronounce as Theseus, and we'll talk about that some other time. I just want to briefly note that in the news in the past week, there was a coup that happened in Myanmar. We call that Miandian. There was a coup, C-O-U-P. You would pronounce it as coup with no P and just coup, okay, which means 政变. We know that Heng Shan Suji was arrested. She was detained by the military because they did not like the result of the election. She was re-elected overwhelmingly, but the military stepped in to arrest her. So that's called a coup. And that's what Donald Trump wanted to do, but he has less luck because the United States is a well-established democratic country comparing to Myanmar. Here's a recommended video. I wonder if you have the time to watch it. It was an eye-opener for me because I was talking about all these maps of the world. You see, all of them, they divided the world in different ways. And this video is brand new to me, even though it existed for more than 100 years. I was never aware of such kind of dividing the globe into regions according to the long natural history of our planet. We live on this planet. Our lifespan is so short, at most 100 or 110 or 20 years. In our lifetime, we see that the Earth is the same thing, maybe with some changes. However, if you look back over millions, even billions of years, the Earth was not like this at all. It was sometimes colder, sometimes warmer, sometimes splitting into different parts. And this kind of biogeography is a line of study that considers the Earth through its history, how the land masses were located, and they were sometimes squeezed into one piece and sometimes splitting apart. And because of this particular part of the history, you know that plants and animals were distributed accordingly. It's not an accident that they were that way, but it was totally new to my mind. So this is a short video that tells you that in the past, the earth, the land on the earth were in different shapes, with different parts in water and different parts connected together. And then they split into several different pieces according to this map. So at one time, 200 million years ago, this part was one piece and this part was another piece. So even though now they are so closely next to each other, they have different plants and animals because for millions and millions of years, they were not connected, and they have all those flora and fauna developed on their part of the world, which is far away from the other part. I will talk about it a little bit later, but this is a map of the world now, but painted in colors based on where the land was millions and millions of years ago. And this map is what we saw last time. It's called a map of biomes. It divided the earth into all these colors, and I counted there were 18 of them. And I told you that in South Africa, they pride themselves for having many, like 5 or 6 of the biomes in the world. So they think they're very proud. They have such a diversity of plants. And some other countries, especially the smaller ones, they would not have such a variety of plants and animals. And after last week's class, my sister sent me another map, which is this map. She said on this website, this map, which turns out to be a climate map, it's not a map divided according to the plants, but just it's divided according to the climate. And they have 30 types of climates here. And I counted there are 30. And of course, you can see China has a great variety of climates. And of course, United States, I heard it was number 1. But if you look at this map, the coloring is very different from this and from this. So there are different ways to divide the earth in order to talk about the plants and animals on it. And one way is like this, by dividing them into different climate regions. And one way is like this. You look at the plants and animals on it, and you divide it by the living creatures on it. Living, we always say flora and fauna. Flora means plants. Let me find a place to write it. Flora means plants. And let me just write and fauna. So this means 植物 and 动物. It's a term that we often mention the two things together, flora and fauna, which means all the living things in one place or in one country or in a certain climate. We call it flora and fauna. And so right here, I have 3 different maps to show you. You can study plants and animals on Earth by looking at their long historical location of the land, or by what's on it, or by the climate on it. So these are different ways to study the flora and the fauna in certain regions. And here's a map of China uh, based on the so-called Köppen climate types. I assume this Köppen is a German person or something. So you can see it's got lots of different colors. However, let's go back to this, the first one, which is the so-called the biogeographic realms. Realm is R-E-A-L-M, which means the region or the world or universe or whatever. In Chinese, when we say 天下, it's always translated into the word realm. Let me see if I can find it here. Okay, here, realm. This is not a very common word, but if you do translation of Chinese older text, you would use this word quite often because we always say 天下怎样怎样, So that's the word realm. So I'm going to spend the next 2 minutes on this map, which is a person, this map is drawn or invented by Alfred Russel Wallace in 1876. So it is like 120, 44 years ago. He decided that the earth should be studied by dividing them into these areas, which is essentially the same map as this modern rendition of this same idea. This is what he proposed based on the history of the land masses. And there is one line you can see right here. That's very cute. I think it's very, very cute because you always look at Indonesia as the country with all these islands, thousands of islands. And along came this guy in 1876. He drew a line across it right in the middle. So you have Sumatra and the Java and the Borneo on this side, while the rest is on the other side. You have a Celebes and Timor and New Guinea and so on. So this line right here is called the Wallace line, Wallace, W-A-L-L-A-C-E, because you are fooled by looking at this Indonesia as one huge country with lots of islands, because they were not a lot of island together. They were two parts. They were this part and this part that were smashed together some millions of years ago. Okay, so this is I'm not going to go into detail, but the earth used to be many, many different continents scattered on it here and there that you hardly could recognize. Maybe you can tell this one here is Greenland, and you could tell, I don't know. This is what the earth was 900 million years ago. When we say MYA, it's a million years ago. And this picture is called, at that time, this age was called Rodinia. At that time, it was 900 million years ago. It's got this part, which is Laurentia, and the Baltica and the Amazonia. So all the continents were scattered about everywhere. And then 700 million years later, or no, 600 million years later, they squashed. They were all together. This is called the Pangea. Pangea is a much more common word than Rodinia. People know Pangea because it is closer to our time, even though it's 330 million years ago. So right now, this is Greenland. You can see However, over here you have Africa and South America and India and so on. This part is called the, well, right now it's all called the Pangea, but after a while they start to split. So you can see that is Greenland, okay? So this is Canada, and this is Europe. You could clearly see Norway and Finland, Sweden, and Russia. This is Western Europe, but this part that splits up, this part is called Gondwana. That has Africa and South America and India. I think this is India. So India was very far apart from Asia for a time until it finally smashed into the Himalayan right here. That's where India went. These are all foreign to us, but if you know how the earth was shaped, which parts were together, which parts were separate, then you will be able to understand some of the animals like this or this or this. They could be found here and here and here, and you know it's because they were the land masses were together. That's why they can be found over here, but they could not be found on the other piece, which is Europe, North America, and China. So this is a very interesting field, but we were not told in our high school education. Okay, now let us start with the vocabulary, and the first word is portmanteau. This is a kind of traveling trunk or suitcase, very, very big suitcase. That's, you open it up from the middle and it separates into two equal parts. And you stand it on one end so you could open it and you would be able to hang up clothes on the racks, or you would be able to open the drawers and put your things in it. So this is a very ingenious design of a suitcase. It's used very, it's commonly used probably over 100 years ago. Yeah. So right now you don't see that, and you cannot carry it onto an airplane because it's too big, let alone a carry-on case. It's just way too big. But when people travel in the past, they want to keep their clothes in shape, not wrinkled or not all crumbled together. So they want to have a portmanteau. Portmanteau, okay. And in the original language, it is a word made from two French words. The part port means to carry, and the portmanteau means coat. So it is a trunk which you use to carry the coat. So that's the meaning of that word. However, right now, if you ask anybody who knows this word, they probably don't even know it means this thing because it was totally hijacked by Lewis Carroll, who wrote Alice in Wonderland. Have you heard of Alice in Wonderland? We call that 爱丽丝梦游奇境. It's this book. It's very plain. You could not even see the title on the cover with the little girl holding a rabbit sideways in her hand. This book is called Alice in Wonderland, first published in 1865. And the author is called Lewis Carroll, and his real name is Charles Dodson, and he's a mathematician. Being a respected mathematician, when he wants to write a really fantastic but a ridiculous story for a little girl named Alice. He chose Lewis Carroll as his pen name. We say that's his pen name. Pen is 钢笔, pen name. This is his pen name, Lewis Carroll. It is also called nom de plume. Sorry, it's two words here. This is literary name. Nom is name, and a plume is a feather of a bird, which is used to write. So a literary name or a pen name 是我们说的笔名. So Lewis Carroll is his pen name. And this book was illustrated, and it was published in United Kingdom. Then it's the genre. When we talk about genre, we usually say the classification or category of something. And this book belongs to what genre? It belongs to fantasy, literary nonsense, because it's full of nonsense. If you remember the story, there was a little girl who saw a rabbit with a watch. The rabbit took out the watch and looked at the time and say, "Oh, it's terribly late." And the rabbit went down a hole into another world, and the squirrel also followed him and got into a wacky world that's just so weird that the book is called The Literary Nonsense. And because it's so immensely successful, Lewis Carroll wrote a sequel to it, which is called Through the Looking Glass, 穿越过镜子. This is a pair of books, two books, both about the same thing, but with different things happening. The hero or heroine of the book is Alice, a little girl, and a rabbit, and a horde of other strange creatures. So the tale plays with logic. Things were happening that are not logical. It's so weird. It just made people love the story so much because it's so ridiculously weird. It's very popular and enormously influential. And it has never been out of print, 就是从来没有断过版哈，一直都在 always in print. You can always buy it somewhere, and it was translated into at least 97 languages, and Chinese is of course one of them. And it was adapted into tons of stage plays, movies, radio shows, art, paintings, ballets, theme parks, and board games and video games. This is a very popular thing. So why do we talk about this story? And when we talk about portmanteau, it's because in this book, in fact, it's in the second book, Through the Looking Glass, the character, the egg-shaped character, Humpty Dumpty, he wrote a poem called The Jabberwocky. You don't have to learn that word. It's a word that he made up. This is a poem that Humpty Dumpty wrote. Of course, it was Lewis Carroll who wrote it. Humpty Dumpty wrote, and he explained to Alice the words that she has never seen before. One is slithy. It is the word that combines the word slimy and the lith. Slimy 就是黏黏的 very sticky and wet and sticky. And lith is very light and airy and elegant and soft. So when he combines these two words, it becomes slithy. That is a word he created out of two words by giving up parts of each word and put them all together. It becomes slithy. And another word in the same poem is called the mimsy, M-I-M-S-Y. It combines the two words miserable and flimsy. So Humpty Dumpty says, I made these two combination words and I will call them portmanteau. So portmanteau means a word made of two words by giving up parts of each one and slam the other, what's left, into one word. That is the word. It's like a portmanteau, which is the suitcase. There are two meanings packed up into one word. That's why he gave the name portmanteau to any words that were a combination of some other quite different words. Okay, I hope I explained that carefully and reasonably understandable. Here is the original illustration in the book, Through the Looking Glass. And here is Mr. Humpty Dumpty sitting on the wall. He is shaped like an egg, and he's so big-headed that he's wobbly and he is likely to fall off the wall. And because he's shaped like an egg, and when he fell off the wall, he's broken into pieces. So there is a nursery rhyme, which is very famous that we can memorize. It says, Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. 摔了一跤. All the king's horses and all the king's men cannot put Humpty Dumpty together again. This is what all the children, when they were taught the five years ago, they would learn this one. And there are different songs, music to go with along with it. At least I think I knew two, but at least one I'll sing to you. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men cannot put Humpty Dumpty together again. There's another version which says, cannot put Humpty Dumpty together again. It's a different music. So this is what every kid in UK would know, but in America, maybe not lately, but 100 years ago, just about all the kids can sing this because kids love Alice in Wonderland because they have wild imagination. So this Humpty Dumpty wrote a poem in the book called Through the Looking Glass. And in this book, the writer, the author, explained that portmanteau, though is a suitcase, we can use that to describe two words smashed together to mean two different things at the same time. So you can have a word that's a motel that combines the word motorway and hotel. And you have the word Brexit, which means Britain exiting the European community. And the bromance means brotherly love, a romance between men. Or you can have the word that's hangry, which means you are very angry because you're hungry. These are all so-called portmanteau. And here I have a KFC spork. If you go to Kentucky Fried Chicken and you get some chicken and some dumpling and some biscuits and coleslaw, and they would give you a spork, which is half spoon and half fork. So it is a spork. And there are some other examples. Timex, I never knew that. Timex is a watch, a Japanese brand of watch. It's a combination of Time magazine and the Kleenex. And the smog is smoke and the fog. Brunch is breakfast and lunch. Tanzania, that's a country, is a Tanganyika and Zanzibar. It's in Africa. Eurasia means Europe and Asia because they are connected. Texarkana is Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana. And Calexico and the Mexicali are both a combination of California and Mexico in different ways. And the Delmarva is a peninsula that has part of Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. So now, even though you started out with not knowing what this word is, and now you know that you already knew quite a few of the portmanteaus. There's a cheese called the Cambozola, which is a combination of Camembert and Gorgonzola. And Amtrak, which is a railway, a passenger railway train, is a combination of America and the track. Velcro, you know, something that you put them together and they stick together. One side is velvety, the other side is it's got lots of hooks. So it's from the crochet hooks, 就是我们所谓钩针钩花的那个针，上面有一个针哈。那另外一边的这个字 is velvet， 就是绒布哈。So the two sides can be put together to mean Velcro. And the word Verizon is from the word truth, which is a veritas, and the horizon. And in Jeopardy, the game show Jeopardy, they often have a category called Jeopormanto, in which you have every question is a portmanteau. In addition to that, we can also make two names together. If two people got stuck together, like Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, we can call them Billary. And if it's Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, when they were a couple, they're called the Benifer. Or Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, you can call them Brangelina. But all the good couples would eventually break up. All of them did, except for Bill Clinton. Tomcat is Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes. And Desilu is Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball. Here's one that doesn't break up, even though the parties really were in bad shape. Miramax is the combination of the parents, the mother and the father's name, Miriam and Max, and they are the parents of Bob and Harvey Weinstein. Here's a New York Times comment in years ago. They have this crossword puzzle, and they have this puzzle master, and this person claimed that how I wish Natalie Portman dated Jacques Cousteau, so I could call them portmanteau, because one person has the name Portman, while the other one has the name Jacques Cousteau. But of course, they never dated each other, because Natalie Portman was born in 1981, while Jacques Cousteau lived to be 87 years ago and died in 1997. So they never could have dated. And the last one is a combination of two holidays. You have Thanksgiving and Hanukkah, or you have Christmas and Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a holiday, a Jewish holiday, sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And the people want to celebrate both or they don't want to leave out the Jewish people in the cold when they were so happily celebrating the either Thanksgiving or Christmas. So they would call that holiday either Thanksgiving or Christmuka. So do we have enough fun yet? So this is how popular Alice in Wonderland was. So I want to ask you a question. What comes to your mind when you think about the United Kingdom, Britain, or England? The whole world got heavy exposure to their culture when they were the superpower in the world, maybe 150 years ago. So lots of people got to know many things about England or Britain or United Kingdom. And they love, for example, James Bond, or they love Harry Potter, or they loved Shakespeare, and lots of things people like about England. So on May 21st, 2019, I was in Azerbaijan, and we were walking in the park. That's the seaside park, which is next to Caspian Sea, 就是里海的意思哈。里海 is the inner sea, inner lake, and it's salty. So 所以它是一个咸水湖。And in this park, we came across a group of so-called Anglophiles. Here's the word, Anglophiles. Phil meaning, it means love. Like philosophy is a word you put together by putting phil in the beginning and the philosophy at the end. That is the love of knowledge or study. That's called the philosophy. 就是爱智的意思哈。When we say phil, we mean the love. It's a word from Greek. And many big cities would have a philharmonic orchestra, translated into 爱乐交响乐团哈。So the word is called the philharmonic. Phil means the love of harmonious music. That's called the philharmonic orchestra. Almost all the big cities have a big orchestra. They call it philharmonic orchestra. Here we have a word Anglophiles, which means people who love English culture, or lots of things about England or Britain or UK. People would love this kind of things. And this day in the park, there's a parade of Anglophiles. And the occasion is that Baku, the city of Baku, which is the capital of Azerbaijan, Baku is hosting a final match of European Cup. European Cup is soccer games. All the European countries got together, and they would contribute the different teams, clubs, and they would have a game that would compete one after and another. Hundreds of big teams were competing with each other. And what did they come up with? The last two teams standing are Chelsea and Arsenal, both from the city of London, which is quite a coincidence. It has never happened before. Two clubs in the European Cup final were from the same city. So people were so excited that they had a parade of Anglophiles. And that's, so what do you think you will see in such a parade? As I just mentioned, all these things, and Alice in Wonderland. Don't forget this. Here we have Queen of Hearts and the Chelsea cat. Not Chelsea, Cheshire Cat. Okay, we're talking about Chelsea Football Club, but this is Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland. And these are from Harry Potter. And this is Azerbaijan. This is an enlarged part, but it's located here. And they're quite far away from London, but there are many people there who love England. Here we have Alice and the Rabbit, and this is a Mad Hatter. He was played in the recent Alice in Wonderland movie by Johnny Depp. And who else? Oh, these are all from Alice in Wonderland. Here you have a clear picture of this Cheshire cat. And here, of course, the Fabulous Four, the Beatles. And the next one is the Paddington Bear and the Shakespeare. This one, this man plays Shakespeare. Of course, so we all know Shakespeare, but some of you may not know Paddington Bear. There were two recent live action movies about Paddington Bear, and quite surprisingly, it was very entertaining. I've seen both of them. Yeah, I didn't expect me to like any of them, but they turned out quite nicely. And here's the guards at the Buckingham Palace, the Queen's guards. Here's the Queen. Here's her husband, Prince Philip. And here's James Bond. So I'm just showing all these things, people, characters, cosplay. Nowadays we say cosplay, COSPLAY, which is a portmanteau of costume and play acting. Nowadays, with video game being so popular, there are lots of people who are fanatically devoted to some game characters, and they would like to dress up as those characters. That's called cosplay. The next one is about Cluny Abbey. Cluny Abbey is a museum in Paris that has a lot of unicorn tapestries. That's why I'm showing you this tapestry today. This is an old abbey. It was destroyed, the most of it, but it was rebuilt partly. It's located in Latin Quarter on the left bank of the river Seine. Here is the river Seine. Is next to Paris University, which is also called La Sorbonne. And it's one of the oldest universities in the world. And this left bank, do you know how to count, how to tell the bank left and the right bank of a river? That is, if you stand on the river and facing the sea, where it goes, the water would flow this way from your back to your front. Then the left-hand side is the left bank and the right-hand side is the right bank. And in Paris, the left bank is known for the university, the ancient university, and the people who spoke Latin there. So this part of the city is called the Latin Quarter. And lots of artists would live there because the rent is cheaper due to the university. The students could not afford expensive rent. So you go to a university, you would find some cheaper rent there. And artists who are famous for being poor, they would tend to live there. And you know the famous opera called La Bohème. In Chinese, we would call it 艺术家生涯, which is about a group of artists who lived very poorly in the Latin Quarter in Paris. And it's a Puccini opera, just among the very, very few that are top level, most popular opera in the world. And the Cluny Abbey is located close to that Latin Quarter. It's probably in the Latin Quarter. There you have this river that goes all the way to Normandy. This is a direction the water flows, and this side is the left bank, and that side is the right bank. The right bank is the administrative side, like City Hall and so on. Yeah, City Hall is probably there. It's called the Hotel de Ville. And the Palais Royal, these are all the palaces like Tuileries and the Louvre, Luofugong. That's on the right bank, and this is the left bank. And the three circles I made here, these are the three museums. We went on the free museum day. They are quite close together, and this one is Cluny. Cluny Museum is famous for the 6 tapestries made in 1500. Tapestry is what we would probably call a rug or carpet if it's put on the floor, but tapestry is hung on the wall, 所以叫做壁毯. There are 6 unicorn tapestry in Cluny Museum. 5 of the tapestries are commonly interpreted as depicting the 5 senses, which we happened to talk about last time: taste, hearing, sight, smell, and touch. And there is a 6th one. Last time we learned that auditory is hearing. These are the adjectives: visual, vision; olfactory, smell; tactile, touch. Some people would say tactile, some people would say tactile. And gustatory is about your taste. So these are the 6 unicorn tapestries. They all have the similar characters and the colors and the pattern, but each one is different. This is about hearing. I don't know, you have to look into it. This one has a musical instrument, but if you're interested, just go online and look for Cluny and you can find all these pictures. I'm just letting you take a quick look. This one is for sight. This is smell, touch, and the taste. So these are the 5 senses of the unicorn tapestry. And there is a 6th, which clearly says it is amont sur désir. As to what it means, people have all kinds of explanations, interpretations, and they think this is about love or understanding. Okay, it's up to you to decide, but that's what people think. Our next word is pollen, which is 花粉. In order to know about pollen, you need to know the different parts of a flower. Here is a standard kind of a flower, and there are 3 major parts of a flower. We have stamen, which is the 雄蕊. We have pistil, which is 雌蕊. These words are not for you to remember, okay? And this part is called the perianth, which is the 花被. 花被, the covering of the flower that protects both the stamen and the pistil. But when you look closer, this 花被 contains the petals, which is a very common word, 花瓣, petal. And this bottom part, which 我们叫做花萼, 这个叫做 sepal or sepal. I usually pronounce it as sepal, but sepal is far less common word than petal. Petal, its Latin name is corolla. You know, there's Toyota car called the Corolla. But of all these words, petal is probably the most commonly recognized word, petal. And then this is xiong stamen. It's got all different parts of filament and anther, but pollen is a word that people know quite often. That is huafen. Huh? And then it's this sure. This part is sure. It's got a top that's called a stigma, and the middle stem, it's called the style. And the bottom part where the seeds are, we call ovary or 子房. Huh? We probably learned in Chinese 子房, 花瓣, 雄蕊, 雌蕊. Huh? That's as much as you need to know in Chinese, but in English, you don't even have to know that many words. The ovary is used for animal and plants. So when you call part of a flower, ovary is 子房, but in an animal, ovary is 卵巢. Okay? So of all these parts, you only need to learn pollen and ovary and the petal and the pollen. That's about it. Yeah, the rest you don't have to learn. Then we talk about hybrid, and one natural hybrid is mule, which is from a female horse, 赤马雄驴, and a male donkey. It's called in Chinese a luo or ma luo, but most people call it luo. Mule is a relatively common word. Horse and donkeys are totally different species. They even have different number of chromosomes. 叫做染色体, huh? So how they come to create an offspring, it just so happened, I guess it happened naturally, which is against nature. So a male donkey is called a jack or jackass, ASS, huh? And the female horse is called a mare, huh? When you have a nightmare, which is 噩梦, 做噩梦的时候, you have the nightmare, as if a horse is stepping on your chest. That's how this word came from, I guess. We seem to believe that mules are more patient, 比较有耐心, huh? Hardy, they're more resilient, they can take hard work and live longer than horses. So they're better than horses in these three ways, and they're better than donkeys in the other ways, which is less obstinate, 没有那么顽固, huh? Obstinate, and more intelligent. So it's got the better traits of two animals put together and got rid of the worse traits. Traits 就是它的特点, T-R-A-I-T 加一个 S. So horses and the donkeys, they all have different traits. And when they combine together and have an offspring, they seem to have the better quality of both species. So that's good. That's why it's used quite often all over the world. It's not just in the West or in the East. People came across such kind of animal in many different countries. On the other hand, you have hinny, which is rare. I mean, it seems that a female horse would like to mate with a male donkey, but not quite the other way. So a female donkey, which is called a jenny, and a male horse, which is called a stallion. Of these words, probably stallion and donkey are regularly recognized, but hinny, probably nobody knew hinny. And these kind of offspring, they are sterile, meaning they could not produce a new, they cannot have babies who would carry on the traits. They are sterile, actually. So here's the hini. We would call that 绝体, or I don't know, maybe it's not 绝体. I have to find out. Or 驴骡, luo, lü, luo, ma luo, all kinds of words. So this is a hybrid, which is through sexual reproduction. So you create different breeds, not always by sexual reproduction, but sometimes just by selection. For example, there's a seed company called Burpee. For years, they have an award. They want to pay a big award to people who would come up with seeds for marigold, marigold, which 我们叫做万寿菊哈. Burpee would like to see white marigold, so they put up an award. And of course, some people would try to pollinate different marigold and raise the next generation. Some people would just select the lightest color and then keep planting it and keep picking the least colored flowers. So there are different ways to get improved different breed. But Burpee, probably 20 years ago, they finally, after 25 years, they finally found a winner, and they awarded something like, I don't know, $25,000 or something to a lady who produced a white marigold. Hybrids are not necessarily in between the two parents. I mean, for example, a black person and a white person, their children could be somewhere in between. However, when not always something in between. Sometimes two shorter parents would have a hybrid offspring that is much taller and bigger in some cases. So they just have traits from different parents, not necessarily an intermediate one in between them. Because people do this kind of thing so much, every time they hit a jackpot, they found a new breed that is so good, they immediately try to propagate a lot of it so that the old strain will become extinct. 就是会绝种哈. For example, you have tomatoes, some are sweet, some are meaty, some are this and that. But then immediately when they come up with a new strain of tomato that can be kept for a long time and very easy to ship and will not be bruised easily, then that strain would be propagated all over the world. All the farmers would like to plant a tomato that is that keeps well and doesn't bruise so much. Bruise 就是打伤哈 B-R-U-I-S-E. For example, 你摔一跤 and you would have a bruise that is blue or green colored. 是什么淤血哈，你的淤血哈。所以说 if you have a tomato that can ship very well, then people would only plant that kind, even though it doesn't taste very good. For example, when we were younger, we buy tomatoes with cracked shoulder. On the tomato close to the top, you would have cracks. And people did not like that. So they tried to breed that out of that breed, the tomato. So now it's impossible for you to find a tomato with cracked shoulders. By heavy manipulating this kind of reproduction by human, it seriously it threatened many species with extinction. many species, you can no longer find the old tasty variety because they don't keep well. So people nowadays want to find the heirloom. Here's where I put it already. Heirloom variety means it was passed on from your ancestors. They saved their seeds and they replanted year after year or generation after generation. These are called the heirloom variety. Right now, you can go online to buy heirloom seeds. They are supposed to be more flavorful, but harder to keep or having some other defects. But they are usually much more flavorful. We were talking about that hybrid and genetic manipulation, or GMO, genetically I forgot, genetically managed or something. Lots of plants are genetically manipulated by big companies such as Monsanto. Right now, we're talking about cereal staple crops that were planted in huge scale, on a huge scale, such as rice, wheat, maize, millet, sorghum, 这个叫做米、麦、玉米、小米、高粱哈。All these cereal 我们叫做五谷哈。We say 5 kinds of cereals. Actually, there are more than 5 kinds. In Chinese, when we say 5 kinds of cereal, it includes beans too. So these are called the staples. Staples means they are basic, they are cheap, they are readily available, and they have nearly all what you need to live. So for poor people, this is a good source of food. However, nowadays people are so far away from poverty that they look at these as evil because these are high carb, high sugar, high whatever. They're considered evil food, but they were, for thousands of years, they were the basic food. Common staples includes the cereal, which are monocots, 就是单子叶植物哈。And the second category is starchy tuber or root vegetables. These are not monocots, they're dicots, DICOT, 双子叶植物哈。Such as potato, cassava. Cassava 是树薯哈，或者叫做tapioca， 或者叫做 manioc. Some people would call it yucca. Some people would call it what else? Anyway, because it's so common in so many places, so their names got to live. Many different people call them in different names, using different names. Sweet potatoes, yam, or taro. Taro is 芋头, huh? These are all starchy vegetables, either as root or tubers. Tubers are 地下茎, huh? They were underground. They look like roots, but they are not roots because they have buds growing directly out of those eyes. And lentils and beans, these are the staple food. And the great majority of them, as we mentioned last week, they were pollinated by wind instead of by bees. On the other hand, vegetables like squash or peaches, peach trees and things like that, they need bees to pollinate them. Here we have some apiary, which means a farm of bees. Now, this person, the beekeeper, owns an apiary, which contains boxes and boxes of hives. Hives 是蜂窝哈. These are hives on pallets, so they can use a tractor to move them by sticking the forklift underneath the pallet and move them around. Beehives need to be moved from place to place because flowers are not in bloom forever. They have to go where the flowers are. I have some pictures of bees and beehives. And bees came from Southeast Asia, probably from the Philippines. But it's so valuable that it quickly spread to many other places. And this is a wonderful picture of beehives, the comb, bee comb, OK 这个我们叫做 comb， 像梳子一样的 comb， 可是是made of beeswax and like this. Depending on the shape of your beehive, if it's a box, you would certainly get sheaves of honeycombs. You can insert into it or take out of it. Some fancy 5-star or 4-star hotels, in their included breakfast, they would put just a sheet of honeycomb there, dripping with the honey. It's a very beautiful sight. And last time when I talk about the word apiary, because I did not write it down beforehand, I thought there was a word very close to it, and that's aviary. Okay, aviary and apiary are two different words, of course. Apiary is a farm of honeybees, and aviary is a big, huge cage where you put different birds in it, sometimes even with plants, so they could fly around instead of being in a tiny cage where they just sit there. Okay. So aviary is unlike a big bird cage, it is much larger. So sometimes it's called a flight cage, which means birds in it can fly in it. And the birds presumably would feel better in an aviary. Sometimes in the zoo or in the bird garden, you would see huge aviaries, 100 feet high or wide or something. So you have many different kinds of birds in it. This we don't have to go into detail. It's a colony collapse disorder. That is the honeybee colonies. Colony 就是一群蜜蜂住的地方啊。Each queen bee would, every time a queen bee matures, it would fly away, taking with her a swarm of other bees. That's called a colony. With one queen, there is a colony. And all these, well, we can talk about different kinds of bees. There are worker bees and there are drones. Drones are male ones. They don't work. They just sit there and eat. And they fertilize the queen's eggs, while all the worker bees are female. Okay. So there is a very alarming beehive colony collapse disorder that they die off. Sometimes 30 to 70% of the hives would die off, which is very, very serious for the farming industry because you need them to pollinate your zucchinis and the pumpkins and the apples and so on. And that's probably caused by either pesticide, 就是杀虫药, or virus, a combination of those things. Okay, this is chlorophyll, enough to say that leaves need to be green, having chlorophyll, in order to make sunshine and CO2 into starch or sugar. So this is a wonderful natural synthesis that's created from out of thin air, just sunshine and the CO2, and you can create sugar or starch only because you have chlorophyll. If you don't have green leaves, you usually cannot make it happen. So this is a very important 叶绿素, huh? It's essential in photosynthesis, 光合作用. It allows plants to absorb energy from light. So the sunshine can be shining on the tree, but without chlorophyll, nothing can happen, okay? So synthesis is a kind of 化合, but two things becoming one, a chemical synthesis. But the one we just described, which is photosynthesis, it's not a chemical synthesis. You cannot just take two chemicals and mix it together to create the starch or sugar, but you need a biosynthesis. You need the tree leaves or vegetable leaves. You need green leaves with chlorophyll in order to make it happen. So it's called a biological synthesis. This is auxiliary. It's just a word to be learned. Here I'm going to talk a little bit about Stone Age. Last time we talked about Stone Age, and I said litho, the prefix lithic is about a rock. And when you have a Stone Age, you have old Stone Age, middle Stone Age, and the Neo 新石器时代, huh? They're divided into different times and marked off by what kind of stone tools were used, from very preliminary, rudimentary, simple, crude Stone Age tools in the Paleolithic age, all the way into Neolithic, which is much more developed. And then along the way, you would have some timeline marked off by invention of fire making, tools making, and Homo sapien came up, we, the human being, not the Neanderthals, but the Homo sapiens. 这个现代的人是从 Homo sapien 来的哈。They emerged in the middle Paleolithic age. And then later you have people learning to domesticate dogs. And here later you have domestication, which means people start to raise pigs, cows, goats, and so on. These animal stocks that can be raised in the confinement instead of always going out to the wild to hunt for them. And at the very latest, there were potteries in many, many cultures. Pottery started, 就是陶器, pottery started in the late Neolithic time. So when we say Stone Age, that is a common word, Stone Age. A more academic word would be Paleolithic or Mesolithic or Neolithic. The one in the middle is called Mesolithic, and here we learn the prefix Meso, M-E-S-O, which means middle. Mesopotamia is 两河流域, the area in between two rivers. It's called Mesopotamia. This is not a new word. I just want to let you know to remember this guy. Is very, very popular on YouTube. He's got tons of videos there. And he has this genius of telling people about complicated scientific things in a very plain and simple and humorous way. His name is Neil deGrasse Tyson. And especially when you could not go anywhere like nowadays, you could just spend all your days watching Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's wonderful to watch and so funny. Not only is he funny, he also partnered with a co-host who is a comedian by trade. He would invite a comedian to sit next to him who knows nothing about science. And between themselves, they talk about things that would make the audience, you, learn a lot about science very easily and quickly and happily. It's not dry. It's very full of fun. Next one is a comet, meteor, and a meteor shower. Comet is a thing which is quite big, and it usually comes once every, say, 33 years or 76 years. They have different orbital period. It takes them so many years to go around the sun. So they're like one of the planet in the solar system, but their orbit is so huge that you couldn't see them for years, like Halley's comet.我们叫哈雷彗星哈。There are quite a few of those, but we only see them in the solar system. There must be many not in the solar system, but we don't see them. In our Chinese history, ever since Sima Qian, they diligently record every comet they ever seen. That's why the entire Western civilization must study Chinese history in order to know about the comets that comes and go. So that's called the comet. It has the nucleus, which here, nucleus is the heart of it, and coma is the surrounding air or dust or things all around it. That's called coma, and it's got a tail. And when it comes closer to the sun, because of solar wind and the solar radiation blowing this way, they would show a bright tail and a bright coma. So that's the different parts of a comet. And you would see them once in a while, and I have never seen one. Okay. The one that I mentioned, the Halley Huixing, Halley's comet, we know that it appeared not too long ago recently, but I didn't get to see it. But it comes around every 76 and a half years. So before that, that was the year around the time Mark Twain died. But the time before that, go back 76 years, that was the year Mark Twain was born. So he loved this comet. But in 1812, that year, it also came in 1812. So when you watch the movie of War and Peace, which is made from Tolstoy's novel, 托尔斯泰的《战争与和平》, that novel. The movie I saw, which has Henry Fonda and Audrey Hepburn and Mel Ferrell, there was once a Pierre who was played by Henry Fonda walking on the streets of Moscow, and that Halley comet was right there above in the sky. And of course, that story, that War and Peace, is about Napoleon. Napoleon came invading them, and was defeated because it was too cold. And Tchaikovsky wrote 1812 overture, 1812序曲, 柴可夫斯基的序曲. It's about that war between France and Russia. And Russia was very proud how they beat Napoleon. That's their pride and joy. And that's closely related to the comet Halley. So this is a meteor. It doesn't have a hard core. It doesn't have a huge tail. It doesn't come back all the time, or even though very rarely, but it does come back many years later. Meteor is just a tiny speck of sand. As it came closer to the Earth, it was sucked by gravity of the Earth, and it came through the atmosphere, and it burns to ashes. It's usually just as big as a grain of sand, or sometimes a rock, but by the time it reaches the Earth, it's already gone because of the friction burning it. It's going too fast, because it's too fast. So it leaves a streak in the sky, but it definitely comes to the Earth and died. That's called a meteor, not a comet. And the meteor looks like this. It could be as small as a grain of sand, but as it comes into the atmosphere 就是大气层, let me put it down somewhere. Maybe it's in here. Okay, it's here, right here. Atmosphere, 就是大气层. As this meteoroid, which is that piece of rock that came into the Earth's atmosphere, it was burned into ashes. It could be very small, okay? And sometimes there are a lot of them all at once, as many as 1,000 in an hour. Then we would call that a meteor shower. It's got lots of meteor happening at the same time, and it's always in the similar time of the year. That is because the Earth goes around the sun like this, round and round. And on this orbit, 在这个轨道上, there are areas with lots of dust. Maybe something happened in the past and something bursted and scattered in that area. So every time the Earth goes into that area, there are lots of dust that would fall onto the Earth. So we would call that meteor shower a name, because when that happens, we look at the sky and we thought they all came from certain star, but it's not true. It's just that those dust in the air was there. Not in the air, there was no air there, in the space, okay? So in different spots in our orbit, the Earth orbit, there are places more densely populated by the debris of these dust. So when the Earth goes to that area, you see meteor showers all day. And usually we have a window of a month, and the middle of that month would be where you can see the most meteor shower. That's a peak period of the meteor shower. And some people would say, oh, I know, 狮子座流星雨 or 英仙座流星雨. Yes, you probably know that, but there are 900 such meteor showers throughout the year. So there are 900 names you need to know. I guess you don't want to know that many. Here's an time-lapsed exposure. You would set up your camera on a tripod. Tripod 是个三脚架, a tripod. You set your camera on the tripod so that your hand will not be shaking because your hands are not there. And you click on the aperture, aperture, 光门哈，你把它打开 open it for an extended time. Like this picture, the aperture was open for 4 hours. Usually we take a picture in a fraction of a second. So 4 hours is a very long time. And you could see so many meteor showers all over the globe. So at the peak, there would be as many as 1,000 meteors an hour. For example, when the 狮子星座的流星雨 we call it a Leonid Leo or Leo, Leo is 狮子星 lion constellation when you have a meteor shower, you always add IDS to the end of a constellation to mean that the meteor shower that seems to come from that constellation. So Leonid is happening usually, if every year, from November 6th to 30th. That's the one I saw 19, 20 years ago. Yeah, because my granddaughter is 19 years old and she was there, but not as a person yet. So that's when the only time I saw a meteor shower was on that day. So this data center, it keeps a list of over 900 suspected meteor showers, of which about 100 are well established. So maybe 100 have names, not all 900. And NASA has a daily map of active meteor showers. So having 900 meteor showers throughout the year, meaning that every day there is something out there. So NASA has a daily map of active meteor showers. You can check. These are the few words that I'm going to go over quickly. Diagnosis, 诊断. Pose, 脉搏, pose. Extrasensory perception, 这个就是第六感, Savor 是切断的意思, When we say savor, it's very abrupt and brutal. 我们如果说 separate the two things, it can be very gentle action, but savor means 掐一个大的斧头这样啪一下把它切成两段 so some couples would savor their relationship. Their relationship would be filled with anger and hostility and so on, so they would like to get rid of it right away. So that verb is called a savor instead of a divorce or separation. This word is called the estuary, which means that at the mouth of the river, where the river goes into the sea, there could be more than one river, but usually there's only one river. When it goes into the sea, there is an area that is half salty, half fresh water. And it's usually flat and swampy, and often because it's got lots of nutrients, you have lots of different marine animals, or not only animals, but also plants too. So this has a different eco system there. It's called 河口湾 or 三角湾. I am not familiar with these Chinese terms, but I imagine 三角湾probably means the delta of the river, but in the form of a bay. So here the water is brackish. Yeah, because it comes to the sea, usually it's not a waterfall, but it's very flat and wide. Yeah, I just saw a picture of a waterfall coming right into the sea. That is quite a sight. I want to take a picture of that. I saw it somewhere else. Anyway, so usually when the river comes to this end, it's wide open and flat, and the water is slow, and the water is brackish. Okay, this is the word brackish. It could mean salty and fresh mixed together, and not really flowing. So it's got the marine influences, 就是受到海洋的影响. It could have tides, 有潮汐哈，有 waves, and the influx of sailing water, 咸水哈. On the other hand, it's got riverine influences, 受到河流的影响. So it has flows of fresh water and the sediment. When the river comes into the sea, it carries it with it lots of sediment, 就是沉积物，沙呀、石头啊什么的。Sometimes we say silt, S-I-L-T, 就是because this water from the rain and the river would break up the rocks and the sand along the way over millions of years. So at the mouth of the river, there'll be a lot of sediments. Sediment can mean those sands or soil particles. It can also mean, for example, if you're making rice wine with rice, then when it's done, that wine would be taken from the top, and what's left is the sediment. It can be 酒酿 or, yeah, 酒酿 or even broken up into smaller pieces, because it has more nutrients, so it's productive. It's a good natural habitat. However, many of them were polluted, or soil erosion, deforestation is 把森林都砍掉了哈，滥伐森林。Overgrazing 就是 you let the cattle or other animals eat the grass too much, so the grass did not have time to recover, and some of them would die. Or overfishing. All these problems were caused by nature or by people. 还有就是 filling the wetland is one bad thing that human do. We love waterfront property, so we would fill up the wetland and build houses and sell as a condominium or whatever. And the wetland is so important to this ecosystem. It absorbs the flood water to avoid flooding, and it protects lots of for example, crabs and little fish and shellfish, so they could survive and thrive. So estuary is a very important ecosystem. Here we have the word distillation. It's about moonshine. The last few words from last week was moonshine. Distillation is when after you ferment whatever alcoholic beverage you're making out of, say, wheat or rice or whatever, you got a big pot of alcoholic liquid, and if you heat it, let it distill, 让它蒸发, and then cool it down and collect that whatever it is, then you will get distilled alcoholic drink. So it's one look, you know it is not wine. It is now like whiskey or rum. Is rum a kind of distilled? I don't know too much, but for example, 高粱酒, that is a kind of distilled alcoholic drink. So you look at it, it's clear and no color. that is after distillation. Before distillation, you would have red wine. You would also have white wine. So it's a little bit harder to tell, but white wine cannot be so without color. It's usually a little bit yellowish or something. So you can, depending on the temperature, you can distill things separately. At certain temperature, you got something, and a different higher or lower temperature, you would get different things. For example, when you refine a petroleum product, 就是石油, 提炼石油, at many different level of temperature, you would have a different finished product. You would have tar or asphalt. You would have airplane fuel or train fuel at different levels. Here we use the distillation method. We can do several things. You can distill alcoholic beverages. You can make salt water, seawater into fresh water. That's called the desalination. That is to take away the salt from the water. That's called desalination. A refining petroleum product into many different products. Or you can liquefy air and you can distill it into oxygen, nitrogen, argon. So they're all in the air, but by freezing them and then let them distill at different temperature, you get a different product. Okay, so 一个做酒的 distilled beverage, this kind of factory is called a distillery, and the equipment is called a still, and spirit is 酒精. And here's a alcohol proof in United States. You can see it says, for example, 50 proof. That means 25% alcohol. Sitcom, yeah, we talked about sitcom last time. And this, I'm not going to go over anymore. Enough to say that if you like, you can learn the words equinoxes and the solstices. Okay, now here is the song we're going to talk about today, Some Enchanted Evening. It's a quite lovely song, a love song. And because I took this Pan Lao's class last week, and I managed to do this, so I don't have to, what happened? Okay. I don't know why it's so low voice volume. Really? I know it's very low, but I don't know how to turn it higher because I have two places I can turn it on. Here I have this thing, it's at the top of it. And here I have another one, which is also at the top of it. Maybe next time I'll bring I have some speakers. But it never used to be like this.
Joe, do you share computer sound?
No, I'm not sharing. That's why. But I can share it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah. I understand what you mean. Yes, exactly. Yes, I will do that. How can I do that? Where is the share thing? Okay, I can stop share and then start share by clicking this. Okay. Is it a little better?
Little better.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. It became a little louder in the end, but that's how it goes. And I'll try to find some speaker and see if I can make it work. Okay. This is pretty straightforward. It's when we sing popular songs, there usually are no very hard to understand words. Here we have this image you can conjure up that he was in this room and he could see that girl far away in the room. And it just makes you think of that Xin Qiji's poem that we're going to talk about later. So this is written by Richard Rogers. No, I'm sorry. The song was written by Richard Rogers. The lyrics was written by Oscar Hammerstein II. And it was first a stage play, a stage musical starring Mary Martin and Ezio Pinza. I think he's Italian. They're about the same age. However, when this stage show was going to be made into a movie, Mary Martin was considered too old, and Ezio Pinza was dead. And they found this younger man who's actually not very young. It's about Mary Martin's age, but when you see a woman at that age, she's already too old to play a young lady. That's why they picked Mitzi Gaynor to play. And you can see how wooden she was in that video we just saw. She has no expression. It's so sad to see somebody being serenaded to, having so little expression. Anyway, it was her great fortune to be picked to appear in such a blockbuster hit of a movie. But all these people are not as famous as James Michener. He's the novelist who wrote the story, and he wrote many, many, many other books. He's prolific. He did such meticulous research on every subject and wrote huge, like 1,000 pages long novels, and dozens of them, and nonfiction books too. And most of them became big sellers, bestsellers. So that's why I say James Michener is a bigger star than any of them. Here's one interesting about this story. It is about its progressive message on racism. In this story, there's a group of U.S. soldiers stationed on the South Pacific Island. It's a fictional place with Bali High, a beautiful mountain next to the sea. So right now, if you go to many places in the world where there is a Pacific Island with the mountain hill going down to the shore, people would definitely claim that's Bali High. That is Bali High, but it's not any of those. Okay, we've seen one in Hawaii, and we've seen one in Tahiti, many places, I'm sure. And I was talking about this soldiers stationed there, and there's a nurse. You saw Mitzi Gaynor playing that girl, a young nurse who's very happy and lovely. And there's an older man played by that Italian actor, Rossano Brazzi. And he plays a Frenchman, a plantation man. He had a farm there, but the soldiers wanted him to spy for them to see where Japanese armies were stationed and what their movements are. And that man fell in love with this young nurse, and that man had a wife. He's a widower. His wife died. He had 2 mixed blood children, and this white nurse could not let go with the feeling that those children were colored. On the other hand, there's a younger man who fell in love with a native girl, and he also was struggling with the racism because he's got a family, a rich family in Arkansas, I guess, Little Rock, Arkansas, that his family would never accept him for marrying a native girl. So he's struggling with that too. And of course, when in the story, if you are a racist, you probably should die in the story. That's how stories go. It's very easy to take care of. So in the end, this nurse lived because she could let go with her racism, while the young man died because he couldn't. Okay, that's not how things go, but in story, that's how they go. So I have a picture of Mary Martin, who was a big star, and she was in South Pacific, Annie Get Your Gun, Peter Pan, and The Sound of Music. And she was in an older time, so only Peter Pan got to be made into a movie with her being Peter Pan. All the others, when it became a movie, had other younger women in her role, like The Sound of Music. And she's the mother of Dallas actor Larry Hagman. If you have watched Dallas, you may want to know that. And this is a poster for the movie, not the stage musical, in which we note that this local girl was played by Lan Si, Frances Nguyen. So she's probably from Vietnam. And this is who played her mother, Juanita Hall. And Rossano Brazzi and the Mitzi Gaynor were the leading two characters, while John Carr and they didn't say, John Carr was a young man. Okay, Frances is a young woman, a colored woman. And this is a picture of James Michener. He lived to be 80 years old, and this is a picture of him like when he was close to 70. And he wrote lots and lots of books, very respectable books. And we probably know a lot about Sayonara. It was a movie with Marlon Brando that was made from Michener's novel. And it was said to be quasi-autobiographical. So the young man played by Marlon Brando, who was partially imaged after him. His third wife, James Michener's third wife, is Japanese, but she was not a Japanese. She was an American Japanese, and she went to the internment camp during the war. So I don't know how this could be quasi-autobiographical, because it's very different from this. Okay. Of all these books, I just mentioned this one, which is one of his nonfiction books called The Presidential Lottery, The Reckless Gamble in Our Electoral System, which is about the electoral college system in the election of United States presidential election. It was published in 1969 and republished in 2014 and 2016, because this is such an important issue nowadays. Now we come to the very last one, which is 辛弃疾青玉案. 青玉案 is the title of this pattern of this 词牌, but the real title, what this poem is about, is here, called the Yuan Xi, which is the 15th of the first month, that is Yuan Xiaojie. It is about a person, probably himself. He went to this festival of Lantern Festival, and there was fireworks and people, lots of people with fancy carriages, and women in pretty dresses with the fancy decorations on the head and on the neck and everywhere. Here we have 鹅儿雪柳黄金缕. These describes all kinds of accessories, 就是装饰 on the women's costume. This is called 鹅儿雪柳黄金缕. I don't know what they really are, but that's what they are for. And there's all kinds of like line dance, not line dance, I'm sorry, lion dance and dragon dance and the lanterns. So he spent 3/4 of the poem describing all the hustle and the bustle around him. And in the end, he said, 众里寻他千百度，蓦然回首，那人却在灯火阑珊处. So for thousands of times, I tried to find that person or that thing. I tried so hard in the crowd. There's so many people and the fireworks and everything around me. But after I tried so hard for 1,000 times, Suddenly, I turned my head around and I saw him or her or that thing is right there, where the lights were just dimming 啊，在那人却在灯火阑珊处，就是这个 lamps and the lights or candles, they were waning. They're starting to go off in the late stage. For example, if you have a candle, the candle would be halfway down. That's where 阑珊处 for a candle is. And you could have a oil lamp that the oil is going down and the flame could be quivering. So 在这个灯火阑珊的时候 he turned around and saw what he was looking for. This is such a monumental moment of time that it's forever etched in our mind. Even though it's got so many beautiful words before it, we only remember the last two lines, the last three lines. 众里寻他千百度，蓦然回首，那人却在灯火阑珊处. This just made me think of on Enchanted Evening when I read about across a crowded room. And then you know even then that somewhere you will see her again and again. That is exactly what this is talking about. I think it's a very good match. This is the 15th of the first month, and 阑珊 means 衰落萧瑟. So you can say it's waning and decreasing or flickering out. Or dying away, dying out, dying. Here is 双调, meaning it's got two identical parts. Yeah, you look at it, you can see it's two identical parts. And it tells you where you should put the rhyme words. You have to rhyme when the format requires that. I wonder what that means. Okay. So who is that person? Of course, you would naturally think that's the woman he was looking for. That's, I would say 95% of the people would say that's the woman he was looking for. However, many people would say it could be himself. He found himself. Or maybe it was about the king, the ruler, the emperor, because he was trying so hard to get himself known by the emperor. That's what everyone in Chinese history was trying to do, is trying to let the emperor notice him. Okay, everyone who wanted to pass an exam, who wanted to be appointed a high official, is trying his best to be noticed by the ruler. As early as Qu Yuan, who was maybe 300 years before Christ, he wrote Li Sao, in which he himself, he claims that's him riding on the horse or in the carriage. He's trying heaven and earth, trying to find what? To try to find that beauty, which means his Lord, his ruler, his emperor. That is the beauty in all the poems since Qu Yuan. Okay, I don't mean every poem. Every poet will write a poem about his struggle to be noticed by the ruler, to be listened to. Okay, that by that beauty. So a lot of people think that very person in this poem means that emperor. And he has a troublesome life. The country is dying because the northern barbarian occupied half of the country, and he, along with the court, were all refugees who went from the north to the south of the Yangtze River. He was initially in his local militia, but later he went as a refugee to the south and tried to become an official. And at age 42, he was demoted and banished for 20 years. So he had a pretty tough life, and many things he suggested to the emperor were dismissed lightly. And he wanted to be a soldier. He was a soldier sometimes, yes, I would say a general. So he's got a lot of poems about him leading soldiers in battles and carrying a long sword on his belt and things like that. And that is partly why I do not like his poems very much, because his life is very far away from mine. Okay, our priorities are not the same. I don't identify with him too much, but this poem is just lovely. When we talk about this poem, we have to talk about Wang Guowei. He's a late Qing Dynasty literary person, very respected. He did a lot of research of Yuanqu and Songci. And he wrote this seminal book, a very little book. Yeah, actually, once I pulled it out of my shelf, and someone in the audience among you also mentioned this, Wang Guowei's 人间词话, in which he said, ever since old days and even now, when anyone wants to have some great achievement or to do a great scholarly work, he must go through three stages in his study or in his work. He has to go through three stages. And the first one, second, and third is how he progressed from hardworking and forget about everything else until he suddenly get it. So these three stages were epitomized by him by Wang Guowei, by quoting three sections of three very famous poems, all of them in Song Dynasty Ci. First, 昨夜西风凋碧树，独上高楼，望尽天涯路. That's when you first embark on your road to success. It's like after an evening of storm, tree leaves were blown and you ascended on top of the pavilion and you look ahead, and it's such a long and desolate road ahead of you. That is this one. And the second stage is 蝶恋花，柳永的蝶恋花. It's 衣带渐宽终不悔，为伊消得人憔悴. Even though here you have your intended lover spelled out in these lines, it can be explained as if you were talking about some other things. It says you became skinnier, leaner and leaner. You lost so much weight that you could hardly tie your belt, but you have no regret. Just because of her, you became such I wouldn't say old, but you became so devastated. Okay, so this is the second stage. You engage in some kind of endeavor that would take everything you have, but you have no regrets. And the third stage is how you finally got the eureka moment. we say Eureka moment. It's about the mathematician. What's his name? A Greek mathematician. I forgot his name. They say that he invented the calculus even before Newton and who's the other guy? Well, he's got a very long name. But I'm sure if I say to you, you will all say, yeah, we know him. But okay. So this is a eureka moment in the poem that we're talking about right now. 众里寻他千百度，蓦然回首，那人却在灯火阑珊处。That is, I searched and searched and searched with hard work, and all of a sudden I turned around and I saw him right there. That is the eureka moment. Yeah, I'm sure I can find it easily, but no, it's not 亚里士多德. Yeah. Well, I can't find my cursor. I was trying to get to the other one. Anyway, I just have to find it. I have to use my phone. Eureka. Eureka. These are all restaurants. Who yelled Eureka? Okay. Archimedes.
Yeah,
Archimedes.
Archimedes.
Okay. Yeah. Archimedes, the King Midas, I guess, somebody gave the king a crown made of gold. The king gave him a piece of gold to fashion into a crown, and the product was done, and the king was very happy, put on his head. But then he started to wonder, did he use up all the gold, or did he keep some of the gold himself and just give me the rest of it and mix something else in it? It weighed the same weight, but it may be mixed in with something else. So he told the Archimedes, and he said, tell me if he used all the gold or not. And the Archimedes thought about this and that. He couldn't find a way to measure it. And then one day he went into a bathtub, and he went right in, and the water flowed out of the tub, overflowed. Then immediately he said, Eureka! That's the Eureka moment. He realized that he could measure the volume of the crown by submerging it in water and measure the water that was displaced. That's the volume of the crown and the weight of the crown. And you divide the two, and you find the density of the crown, and you know the density of gold. And you can compare the two, and it turns out that the crown was not made of pure gold. So that is the Archimedes story of Eureka. Okay. Did I lose my, yeah, okay. Here's my, okay. That's a Eureka moment. Huh? Okay, so we talk about Xinqiji. Here I show you two others, but I did not like them too much. This one, it was collected in our high school textbook, so I was able to memorize it at that time, maybe in in 11th grade or something. But it is about himself as 想当年金戈铁马，气吞万里如虎. So he was looking at Beiguting. Actually, I was at Beiguting. We went to Beiguting and saw lots of poems collected. The streets were just covered with poems, Chinese poems, because it was such a central place in the Nanjing area. a capital area for many dynasties. So many famous poets wrote about these places. And at this, he said, 金戈铁马. So he was a soldier leading the army in a fight against Jin and Liao. Huh? These people are actually later the Qing dynasty barbarians. During Song dynasty, you have Jin and Liao in the northern part of China. However, later on, they came down in Qing dynasty. That's in 1644 all the way to 1912. That's the Qing dynasty with Manchurian government. So I really did not like it too much, but this one is okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Especially when we're getting older, we read about 少年不知愁不是愁滋味，爱上层楼为赋新诗，为赋新词强说愁。I think it could be 为赋新诗强说愁，而今是得愁滋味，欲说还休，欲说还休。却道天凉好个秋. This one is also two identical parts. So you have this line repeating here and this line repeating here. So this is, we can easily identify with this. There are other Chinese poems in the similar vein, but Xin Qiji said it very well. When you're young, you don't know what sorrow is. And you want to write a poem, so you just force yourself to mention you're feeling sorry, but you don't. And now you know everything about how sorry things can be and how sorry you are. But it's better, you better leave it not said. You just say, oh, such a lovely, cool weather, autumn weather, instead of saying how sorrowful you are. So this is, I really cannot identify with it because I'm so happy all the time, but I can understand why he said that, because when he was young, he said he was sorrowful, but he was not. And then when he's really feeling sorry, he stopped saying that. Yeah, I can understand that feeling. Okay, so that is for today. Do you have anything to say?
谢谢老师。
不客气。我今天一整天，就是说整个2个多钟头，我都没有看到我们的照片，所以都不晓得我长什么样子。Yeah, sometimes I would move around a little bit so that my eyeglasses would not be reflecting. I could see my picture, but all day today I could not see anything. Oh, okay.
还是很美啦。
I have a joke. I was with my mother once, and she had a visitor, and the visitor was very, how do you say, sweet. Okay, she looked at me and she said, "Oh, you're still as beautiful as you were 50 years ago or 40 years ago." And my mother got very angry because apparently this guest is not very truthful. She's telling lies. She said, "There's nobody beautiful in my family." Yeah, my mother was very straightforward, and I grew up knowing that I was never beautiful, so I never put any makeup, and it was not my thing. But some people would go look at you and say, "Oh, you're so pretty today. Oh, I love your dress," and this and that. But I never say that. And when I hear that, nah, it's just, I just dismiss that. That's because I'm my mother's daughter, because we never thought we were beautiful.
There are all kinds of beauty, though.
That is true. Yeah.
You are beautiful. Don't have to put on any makeup. You are beautiful.
自然也是美
For
呀。
one thing, I'm losing hair right here. I did not like it, but I'm not doing anything about it. That's just natural. Yeah, I used to have a head full of hair, so much that I could not contain it, but not anymore. That's just life. Yeah. 月欲说还休，却道天凉好个秋。
Very nice.
谢谢老师。